Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Jackie Tomes and Dave Wigram. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
Cool. So today we're going to be talking about getting a grip of your finances. Now, this is something that could be seen as a little bit nerdy, but it's very important for anyone who's, anyone alive, really, but more importantly for business people, startups, and things like that. So I'm really pleased to have you both with us. Can you just give a little bit of background information about yourselves and how you're able to help people manage their finances, Jackie?
So we started our property investment business back in 2014, and we scaled up from working with first me saving up like a crazy person, working a second job to buy the first property, and then since we've scaled up by working with investors to build the portfolio to where it is today. We're around 50 units, property portfolio value around 6 million. And that's our primary business. But out of Tomes Homes, which is called, we have created property strategy, which is essentially helping other property investors to turn their investing from just buying houses and just not really thinking about the bigger picture to actually turning it into a business. And obviously a very big part of that is having a grip on your finances, as you so eloquently put it. So that's what we wanted to niche into today. Obviously, there's lots of different areas that strategy covers, and finance is one of those core kind of pillars, if you like. So, that's what we're here to nerd out on today.
So someone listening to this going, oh, what does a property person know about finance and things like that? So as an investor, you have to manage so many different aspects of finance, whether it's managing the project and analysing the forecast and how much capital you required. You've got all the mortgage things. You've got to work with JV investors and all these weird, wonderful things to make this property business sustainable. So I think you guys are well positioned to help our listeners at home.
And I should also say that's why I have brought I call him my friend Detail Dave here, also my husband. Dave doesn't normally do the podcast thing. He normally leaves that to me, the gobby one.
I like to stay in the background.
He likes to stay in the background, but he is the genius behind it all. And when it comes to like finance and numbers, he can do it like no one else can. And but I think what you're great at, Dave, is you're great at knowing how the details of finance and the nitty-gritty feeds back into the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So it's a very practical approach to finance, which is why we decided to rope him in today to come and join us on this.
So I'm really pleased to have you here, Details Dave, because you are very talented when it comes to managing those things, Excel spreadsheets, all those kind of things, seeing the bigger picture. So I guess the first question I have, not having a grip of your finances can cause an incredible amount of stress across your life, which can roll out across into personal things and all these other problems that it can create, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. Money is a big thing, right? And you have to be aware of it, how to manage it, and how to plan for it. So can we just talk about a scenario today of maybe a startup business which is perhaps struggling with understanding cash flow and capital forecasting, so that we can maybe pass some of those lessons back to our listeners at home? Perhaps they're talking about property business, perhaps they're starting their own completely different business, but the fundamentals are the same, right?
Absolutely. I think we've been through it. Like, we were that company who didn't know what it was all about, and it wasn't until we started working on strategy that someone said to us, so how's it working in your financial area? It was like, have you got a bookkeeper? And we were like, a what?
I think it's just something that's not talked about, and everyone who gets into business is already thinking about the model itself. What are you doing to make the money? How are you marketing? How are you selling? These are all the things that everyone talks about. And unfortunately, the secondary element of kind of how you back up that business and how you make it safe and how you manage everything is exactly that. It's considered secondary. People are much more interested about getting off the ground and growing big and fast than they are about securing everything. So financial management is, I think, bottom of that list in terms of it's all about securing everything. It's all about managing. It's all about organizing to be better, more efficient, and to mitigate risk wherever possible. So people get to it last, unfortunately.
And I think it's beyond we think, okay, all I need is my accountant. My accountant's going to sort out everything for me. And I think this is one of the things that'd be great to talk about today, is what those kind of different roles are within financial management, within a small business, and when you would need them. Because obviously, yes, from a tax point of view, you need someone to file your accounts, but what other data do you need to help you make better decisions, to make sure you're profitable, scalable, that you're building up the cash reserves? And that's what we should be starting to think about as soon as the business starts to get off the ground, how you're putting those things in place.
And it's important to put them in place pretty much from day one. Because you can scale up your property business or scale up all these customers coming in, whatever business it may be. But unless you have good financial systems and good ways of tracking, reporting, monitoring, all that kind of stuff, you don't really know how well you're doing. You may be just a busy fool. And I think it goes back a little bit further than just a business or being a startup or whatever it is. I think managing finances and creating lasting wealth and money, I guess, to a certain extent, isn't really taught at school. And so, although we like to think that, we're good, successful business people, I think a lot of people struggle from it from childhood, and they may not even be aware of it, that lack of financial knowledge. And I think that's where schools perhaps could tweak their curriculums a little bit and just try and help people understand these fundamental elements. Because you will need them in your personal life regardless.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's almost like it's a self-perpetuating thing, because no one's ever really been taught how to do it well. If your parents are good at it, maybe they've passed it on to you, but otherwise you don't really learn how to. So if the people who are teaching in schools have never had to go through that process, then they can't really help in that way. And I think I'm really grateful almost the way that we started out in property by thinking about starting with my own money, because it meant that I learned to really manage it in a way that I hadn't until that point. So I obsessed about how much I was spending on every single element of my life. And even something as simple as just making a budget for yourself, and seeing where all your money is going. And if you're wanting to start your own business, having some additional resource to do that. So saying, do I really need that gym membership, or could I go for a run? Do I really need a new pair of shoes, or could I save that money instead? And having that approach to being really ruthless about what you need. And I think particularly in your early days of running your own business, the leaner you can be in terms of the requirements for your own life, the less stressful it's going to be, and the more realistic it's going to be to get yourself off the ground and have your own expenses covered from your business.
Yeah, I think I'd add to the school part that one of the problems with finances and how you manage it, it's very much comes back a lot to common sense, and a lot of the tools and tactics we use when they're laid out, they're actually often quite simple, and they often come back to not intellectual ideas, common sense ideas. And I have a feeling our schools aren't interested in teaching common sense. To them, common sense is something people have. They're only interested in teaching intelligence and raising people's intelligence around things. And I think that's probably why it gets missed, because they don't see it as something that can be taught almost. But it's just all of these ideas that they just make a lot of sense when you start implementing them, or even when you just first hear about them, it all makes sense, because it's common sense. And then actually once you start implementing them, they have such a huge impact on your life.
And perhaps the teachers themselves aren't really aware of how to financially.
I'm sure they aren't.
Yeah, but I'm sure it can all be taught and learned. So guys, tomorrow in my hypothetical scenario, I'm starting out Angelos Sounders, incredibly amazing business limited. I'm going to get all these great customers. I'm going to be a millionaire in a week, all the usual stuff. Where do I begin from a financial point of view? What kind of systems do I need to look at? What should I be measuring and monitoring in order to see whether my great company is actually doing well, or am I just being a busy fool?
I think as soon as you start, if I could go back, as soon as you start generating any kind of, even before you start generating revenue, the very least you could do for yourself is make sure that you're using one bank account for all your transactions. And that's a mistake that gets made by pretty much everyone at the beginning. You kind of a little bit use your personal account, and then maybe at some point set up another account, and transactions are everywhere. So even if it's not a business account yet, have one account that all your transactions run through, so that when you do start to get more professional about how you're doing it, it's going to be an easier transition. So that's where I would say would be a good place to start. And then as soon as you're actually starting to generate revenue, that's when I would say getting onto a system like Xero, that's Xero. Or QuickBooks, I've heard good things about as well, which is they're online. They're really not very expensive. They're like £20-25 a month, and it's a great way to make that books keeping method as easy as possible.
When you say bookkeeping, so I'm just starting out. I don't know what bookkeeping is. I don't want to go to the library or whatever it is. There we go. Just like break it down really nice and easy for anyone at home who may not necessarily be involved in this world right now. What does a bookkeeper do, and why should that be of use to any business starting out?
So when we send over our accounts to our accountant, we ideally want every single transaction to have been organised in some way or another. You want it to be set up in a way that it's easily understood what that transaction was and what it relates to. So in essence, bookkeeping is organising. It's organising transactions into different categories. That's all it is. And on a higher level, it's then slightly higher level, it's then trying to also match that up with any receipts or invoices related to that transaction. So when we talk about Xero or QuickBooks, all that is an online cloud-based software where all your transactions go into, and it gets neatly organised by either yourself or a bookkeeper into different categories. So you might have a rental income category, and you'll have different, if you have different properties, you'll have a different category per property, and different mortgages will be a category. And this is just clear categorising and organisation of what a transaction is, and so that anyone who looks at it knows what's going on with your finances.
And the good thing is, sorry, go on, Jackie.
I was just going to say that the reason that these systems are so great is because you can actually link them to your bank feeds. So if you've got a business account, you set it up to link to Xero or QuickBooks, and it automatically takes those transactions from your bank account and puts it into this software. So what you're essentially saving the time is someone having to manually enter all of that, and you're getting rid of those horrendous spreadsheets that you have to like manually put in all your receipts, etc. It's already all there, and so for small businesses, it's a really valuable way to minimise the workload.
And the good thing is that it can be done in real time or weekly or monthly on a regular basis. You can assign someone to do it for you, bookkeeper, or you can do it yourself if you're still lean in the beginning. And the good thing is that in a year's time, where perhaps traditionally people will just look back at their accounts and go, right, what did I do a year ago? What was that £3.50 spent for? Jesus Christ, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because you're keeping on top of things on a regular basis, and you can start analysing and seeing, maybe identifying opportunities, but also any problems occurring in your business very early on, rather than in 12 months' time going, oh, Jesus, that summer could have been a lot better if we'd done X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about because obviously the first level to getting somewhere good in financial management is to have your transactions being organised, like David said. So bookkeeping to keep transactions organised under specific categories. And you're exactly right with what you're saying, that normally we only have a look at our transactions at the end of the financial year when our accountant gives us the data. And so what the most important thing is as a small business is to have that information or even any business on a more regular time frame. So that's the next level of getting that set up.
Yeah, so I mean, you really should be making it so that at least by the end of each month, you've organised the last month's data, so that by the end of the month, you can access any information you want about the last month. Because obviously, as you get further and further away, and what most people do is wait until the end of the year, their accountant organise it for them. They just hand over a bunch of receipts and maybe a spreadsheet. The accountant does all the organising for them, and then they receive what's called a P&L, a profit and loss, and a balance sheet for their business. And these bits of information are completely useless, because obviously that is data that was for probably the end of your year was 9 months ago, because none of us are really that organised, and it takes, you're allowed to wait 9 months, so we all do. So the end of that year was 9 months ago, and actually the beginning of that data was a year and 9 months ago. So this data is so old that you can't action anything off the back of it. So we talk about getting on top of your financial management in terms of getting systems and process, or whatever it means for you, to get in place so that you can have it organised and categorised and what we call reconciled, which is where you've pressed the button to say that's a good transaction, I put it in the right place, and you've done that at the end of each month, so that you can see the last month's data.
And what we've found is, so at first when we had a UK bookkeeper at first who'd help us to reconcile transactions. We subsequently moved to work with a bookkeeper in the Philippines. So people be like, how does that work? How do they get your receipts? But it actually really helps to keep on top of your filing system as you go, doesn't it? So what we do is take photos of all of our receipts, of our invoices as we go, and they get sent across to an email account or uploaded to like your cloud-based, wherever you store your files, and your bookkeeper gets access to those. And then those receipts can be matched up with the various transactions. And you just need to make sure you've got a bookkeeper who understands what you need to see in terms of financial reporting on a monthly basis. So you probably want to see some level of profit and loss account, but also starting for that to feed into a cash flow forecast. You want to talk about that?
Before you do, Jack, just before we talk about the exciting world of cash flow forecasting. So I don't know, many years ago, when I first added you on Facebook, I saw one of your posts, and it intrigued me because I know you like to go on holiday very regularly. You structure your life around holidays as opposed to business, which I think is great. One of the things you said was that your bookkeeper or your accountant, whoever it was chasing you almost on a weekly basis for receipts that you might not have sent them. So I thought, bloody hell, on a weekly basis or fortnightly basis, that's amazing. I'm doing it almost on a 6-monthly basis. And I thought, I've got to get a grip on how I do things and become more efficient. I'm really pleased that now that as soon as I get a receipt, I take a picture using Receipt Bank, really cool software, and it gets straight away filed across to my accountant, who then on a monthly basis sends me all the P&L, all the other bits and bobs. But we've got cool graphs now.
Yeah.
Red lines.
Green lines.
Yeah, I love it. I love visualizing the data, because if you sometimes get your balance sheet and all the other bits, it can be quite dry. Whereas if you have it in a nice chart and you can see things progressing over 12, 24 months, it can really, for me anyway, it really gives me a level of encouragement to see that things are going in the right way.
I think there's very few people who actually love looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. Even I find that exhausting in the end. I like it for a bit and then I get worn out. And I think every single person who is running a business is usually more entrepreneurial and therefore likely more creative and likely less eager to be detail oriented. And I think everyone, therefore, who runs a business will want some sort of easy to understand visual guide to their data, and it will help everyone. And I think for me, when we got those graphs, we started to receive clear color-coded graphs and metrics and things where it was just a very quick snapshot that was easy to understand in one quick glance, and you can also see the past and the future laid out before you. It all became much more fun. And I think prior to that moment, it does feel like a drag. It is painful. It's a part of the business. It's not, people don't do it partly because it is boring and it isn't that enjoyable to kind of sift through numbers. But you have to get through that. You have to organize it to get to the point where you can have the graphs and have the fun and enjoy it a lot more, heck of a lot more anyway, and really see how the business is performing just in a quick visual way.
Go on.
I know we've been working together. You've been guiding me on getting a grip on a few things when it comes to the metrics of business and the numbers and things like that. But it was a very painful many months, shall we say, to get all of that data to get to a point where I can then start getting the nice, cool graphs. And you have to go through that process. And I'm really pleased that we work together on it, because ultimately numbers are fundamental to your business. There's no escaping it. You may be focused on all the cool stuff like the property management, the refurbs, or expanding your customer base or whatever it may be, but it's the numbers that are fundamental to your business, and you must get a grip on it. It's so important.
Even if you're a charity, you need to get a grip on it, don't you? Like, it's, if you're not operating in a way that is going to be sustainable in the long term, what is the point of it? Something has to be adjusted as soon as possible. Yeah.
So guys, cash flow forecasting and capital forecasting. Details, Dave. I know you've been go on this one. So can you just explain just briefly to our listeners why they should be looking at cash flow forecasting and capital forecasting, and perhaps some of the things they can start implementing to improve that level of analysis within their business?
Okay, so I think cash flow forecasting is the next level. Once you've got a handle on the history and you've got a handle on a process whereby you can actually see the current data in some sort of real-time format, then the next level you want to be doing is looking ahead and using that previous data, using what's happened in the past to forecast what will happen in the future. And we look ahead 12 months. We find that the most useful period of time, because you start looking further ahead, it's just too many unknowns. And really 12 months is the most actionable period of time. So we look ahead 12 months, we put in everything we can think of into our cash flow forecast. It's in exactly the same format as our P&L. It's in the same previous, so we see all our past data, month on month of past data, and we just forecast exactly the same. We put in every figure we can. In fact, and then when you get it set up with a good bookkeeper, if you can find yourself a good bookkeeper, they should be able to use some common sense approach and actually fill most of this in for you, because they can look at past data and forward forecast for you. And in fact, one of the things our bookkeeper does on a very base level, he doesn't need to know the business that well to be able to do this, because he has the last 9, 10, 11, 12 months worth of data. All he does is he looks at it for one category. He looks at, say, the mortgage for the last 12 months, or the repairs and maintenance, I think is a good one. Looks at that for the last 9 months. He adds it all up, divides it by 9 to work out the average monthly amount, and then he just shoves that in for the next 12 months. So he's just using the past data in a common sense approach. And then when I come and look at this, I will then adjust it if I think he's wrong, or if I think there's differences, and just add a few elements where only you as the business owner know. And you might think to yourself, do you know what, I'm going to have 2 or 3 tenant changeovers in the next few months. So they go in there. There's going to be some costs incurred, and I'm probably going to have some void periods. And you can start to see, and this is the most important thing, you can start to see exactly what impact every decision your business is having on the most important thing, your bank balance, the bottom line. And I think step number 1 with the cash flow forecast is understanding at all times, do I have enough money? Am I ever going to go into the red? Do I run out at any time? And I think that for us is key. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 you're able to start doing is then working out what other opportunities you might be able to take advantage of if you've got more money available, if you can see good growth in the business. And one of the key opportunities you might be able to take advantage of might be hiring a new team member. So you might be looking ahead and saying, do you know what, I've got loads of deals going through right now because I put loads of effort into that. If all goes to plan, in 6 to 9 months, I should have this income coming in, and that will be enough to cover a new staff member of some sort. So therefore you can start planning ahead and hiring your person nice and early, get a good smooth process with lots of checks, and make sure you're hiring the right person for that role. And then I guess the last thing to really, the power of a cash flow forecast, and when you start getting this all right, is to look at how much money you're going to be able to take out of the business. Because really in the end, we're building this business in many ways to satisfy our lives and to sort ourselves out. And the problem is, if you don't manage your finances, you are usually the last person that gets paid, because if there's no money left over at the end of the month, you're the one who takes the hit usually. So it's being able to manage that and see in the future, you know what, I'm only taking this much money per month at the moment, but as I grow, I need to be able to take more, and I can see when I'm going to be able to take more and start planning that into my life, and know if there's going to be a problem. So it's really being able to see the future in so many different ways. And like I say, if you get a good system with a good bookkeeper, it's not that hard to get most of it populated, and then it just takes half an hour, 40 minutes to sit down and just look through it and make adjustments based on your own very good knowledge of your own business, and just fill it out.
And it's also then about passing that data to the right person. So it's not the cash flow forecast, but like our balance sheet, for a while we weren't paying any attention. So your balance sheet shows all your assets and liabilities. And obviously properties, if you're adding value to them, are increasing in value. And if you're refinancing properties at the end, your mortgage out the other end will increase. So your balance sheet is probably quite active as a property investor. And if you are refinancing and the completion statement doesn't make its way over to whoever's keeping your books, your balance sheet is going to be way out of date, which it gets very messy. So making sure that completion statements and mortgage statements make their way over. So it's just kind of like what are your data sharing processes between the different areas of your business?
Absolutely. I was guilty of it. I know a lot of people do this. They have hundreds of different Excel spreadsheets, and they've got data here, data there, sometimes redundant data, and it's all a big mess, really. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's really important to put really good data in at the start, junk in, junk out, right? So, yeah, absolutely, Dave. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said identifying opportunities based on the fact that you have some funds available to grow your business, and cash flow forecasting can really, really, really help with that. So, guys, just to wrap up a little bit, what can people do today to get some quick fix improvements to start improving their financial management of their businesses?
Want to go?
Yeah, go on then. I think step number one, if you've done absolutely nothing, if what you're doing is working out of maybe one bank account and it's all going through that one bank account, hopefully you've done that much so far. If not, obviously do that, set up a new bank account. And then step number two is to start bucketing your money. I think this is the simplest and easiest way to start getting some sort of control. So obviously this doesn't feed into the cash flow forecasting and all that side, but this is step number one to actually getting some measure of control over your finances. So when I say bucketing money, I mean set up a load of savings accounts. Every single savings account is for a different thing. So one might be for your maintenance costs, one might be for just pure savings for future opportunities, one might be for your own paying yourself, your kind of profits, and really get this money coming from your current account and feeding it down into these sub accounts on a monthly basis, because it just automatically starts organizing your money. And you can start to see, for example, if you might find that you just don't have enough money going into your maintenance pot because it keeps running out, and you realize you're not you're not setting aside enough money for that, which means you've got the wrong idea about how much maintenance is costing you in your business. It's a very quick and easy solution to starting to understand how the finance is working in your business. So step number two, after doing that, we do that anyway for all of our companies, all of our accounts.
And personal.
We have buckets for everything. So it's a really powerful tool, even once you're all set up with the more complex systems. And I think step number two is to get yourself onto a cloud-based software like Xero or QuickBooks. Do that ASAP if you can. The later you leave it, the more painful it is. I think you said that earlier, Angelos. It was very, very painful for you for the first 3, 4, 5 months, kind of trying to get everything in place for something that with all of this, the later you leave it, the more data you're having to work with and the harder it is. So get yourself onto that ASAP. And then number three is just get yourself a decent bookkeeper. Just someone, UK-based, Filipino-based. You just need someone who actually can help you in this process, so that it's not all on your shoulders to be organising. Because we're not trained in this, we're not skilled at this. I've learned this all on the job, and it's painful to learn, but you want as much help as you can. And I think having a really good quality bookkeeper who can help you to learn that and can do it for you is essential to this being set up right. So those are the key three things. What would you?
I was going to just take the approach of just, if you're slightly more advanced, if you've been going in business for a while, if you've got a good sized portfolio already, the steps that you can take, because you're probably doing some level of that already. But I think quite often the missing link in small businesses is like, you've got someone maybe doing your books, you've got an accountant or and tax advisor advising you, but there's this whole bit in the middle that gets missed, which is what data do you need to make the decisions in your business? And how are we going to make sure that you can get that data? So we recently hired a financial controller to fill this void for ourselves, because also you were doing a lot of that. Dave was doing that bit in between. Mm-hmm. You're not an accountant. You're kind of like figuring out the best way to like get the right spreadsheets in place, and you don't really know the best way to do it. So it's time consuming and it takes up a lot of headspace. So we now work with a financial controller. He works for us full time. He's based in the Philippines, and he has filled that gap between saying to us as the business owners, what do you need to know if the portfolio is operating effectively? So we can give some ideas of metrics, but what are those key metrics that we want to track, and what pretty graphs are going to help you to not feel like this looking at your spreadsheet every month, your management account every month is going to like be a weight on your soul. And so he's really filled that gap for us, and he's getting very much involved in all aspects of the business so that he really knows what's actually happening. So rather than us having to say, oh, this is happening, feed that data in, he's already involved and he's learning about it. So particularly for a business like property, where there's so many financial transactions, and it's really important that you're on top of it, starting to think about hiring either a financial controller, or the next level up would be a financial director. It's going to be an expensive hire if you're based in the UK, which is why we've gone overseas to work with someone, because it's meant that we've been able to access someone who's very talented and very skilled in this area without the price tag that would be out of reach at this point.
Just before I ask my last question, I just want to say, Dave, you've got a really good sense of fashion, mate. I'm really liking your T-shirt today.
It's on the white brigade, isn't it?
Thanks, Angelos.
Right, guys. So really amazing points you just made there. And if people can just implement some of those things, they can be a lot better off already. So thanks for that. Just to wrap up, guys, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you? Perhaps they've been inspired or want to get in contact, perhaps to work with you. How do people get in contact with you, please?
I think best to go to our website, where we do all of our strategic training and consultancy, which is property-strategy.com. And that's, we put out a lot of content, blogs, vlogs, kind of around these different areas. So you can check those out, get our links to our social media on there, and you can, of course, email us directly through the website too. So that's where I'd go next.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. And I'm sure people listening at home will be inspired, or at least hopefully will start taking some action to get a grip on their finances if they haven't done already. So thank you, guys.
Brilliant.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Angelos.
Go geek out, everyone.
Yeah.
Cool. So we want to hear from you at home. Perhaps you're having issues with your finances. Perhaps you have been inspired by some of the things that Jackie and Dave have been sharing with us today. Reach out to us at hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com or get in contact on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're everywhere. So it'd be awesome. So thanks once again, guys. And I've been Angelos. I'll see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.